I don't know how many of you are familiar with that piece from The Sound of Music. It is, the main character is a woman named Maria, and she has been a novice nun. And the convent has decided that she's not quite meeting the mark. And so they send her on a mission. And this is not a mission that she sought out. She is being told that leaving the cloister, leaving this little contained place, where she's really having a hard time staying because she's a bigger personality than the contained space. They send her to be a governess for 7 children. And have a lovely reminder of this because, well, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, Nancy took Mykal and I to see The Sound of Music. So we had a lovely reminder of this. And this is always a special story to me as well. This was one of the first movies I really remember going to with my mom. And typical of things with my mother, we arrived midway through the movie. So arrived just as there's this point in the movie, and something very big is happening. So it's this exciting moment. And so coming in on this exciting moment, it was fine. You know, I was 5 or 6, and so it didn't matter. But I'll tell you, when the movie had come around the second time, I was screaming about leaving because I was not going to miss that. You know, I wasn't going to miss. I wanted to see the ending twice rather than just once. And anyhow, the reason that this strikes me as such an important piece with respect to creativity is that oftentimes when we think about creativity, there can be a little part of our brain which goes into judgment. Or maybe I'm projecting. Maybe I'm the only one who, when I think that I have to come up with something, has apprehension. Maria sings about that kind of apprehension. Here's what I've been wanting, but I don't know if I can do it. I think that this song really captures it beautifully. There are things that we want, there are things that we long for. And when it's there right in front of us, do we always feel excited? Sometimes we may feel fearful. And it's one of the lovely things that I learned in becoming a counselor for people, and I'm sure that Tate says this to other people, is that the emotional, the physical state of fear is very much connected to the physical state of excitement. And the primary difference is our outlook, how we are framing it at a given moment. So when we frame it from the perspective of a negative, or this is something to worry about, or this is a problem, we give it this negative attribution, and the fear then is what is more prominent, or what we're more aware of. When we change that flavor into joy, or just a perspective of, wow, this is different, then we've left off that other side and we enter into that place of excitement. The body is responding the same way. The body is uplifted. There's a higher level of energy. It's just which side of it are we on? Is it more of the negative or more of the positive? Where are we in terms of that? I think the notion with creativity is that sometimes when we've got our little judges that we've all incorporated, we've all packed it in, we've loaded them up, and we all came by those little judges in a way that there was never any ill intent. When our parents and teachers and people corrected us, which taught us to judge ourselves, they didn't do it because they're like, I'm so going to mess you up. Then I'm going to mess you up. Generally, I'm speaking that I think that parents' intentions and teachers' intentions is one of positivity. They really want a positive outcome. So that assessment of you did it right, or you know you're a little off the mark, we all incorporate that. That incorporation is actually an act of creation. that person that is giving that judgment, that person that said, good job, you really did it right, or, you know, you're really close, but there's this little section here where you're a little bit off. We incorporate that and we take it in as our own personal self-judge. And that self-judge can be one of the things that holds us back in terms of our capacity to express creatively. So, the talk is about creating with confidence, or confident creation. How do we do that when we've packed in all of these critical voices? You know, I'm not really sure you did that right. Cheryl, I think you captured it very beautifully. It's like your dad went through his own things, and then he passed some of them on to you, and some of them were, he really wanted the best for you. I'm sure it wasn't like, again, I really want my daughter Cheryl to have an awful life, so I'm going to teach her this way. And what happens is, we all want the best, but we don't necessarily know how to get there. And in that journey, sometimes we take wrong turns, and sometimes we land in the wrong place. And sometimes we can spend quite a long amount of time in those wrong places. And we can pick up a variety of habits. I'm going to propose 3 P's for creating a more confident creativity. I want us to talk about us being pensive. I want to talk about us being patient. And I want to talk about us being passionate. And I think all 3 are useful for that confident creativity. I'll start with a patient one because I saw that created the most negative response. Has anyone ever seen a 2-year-old want something? They want it, and they want it now. Now, again, I don't know about any of you, but I know that I have my own personal 2-year-old that resides not all that deep. That personal 2-year-old who sees what they want, and they want it, and they want it now. And anything that stands between them and that want is an outlaw. It is awful. The judge is saying, that is wrong, and get rid of it, and I don't like it. The 2-year-old and patience are on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Now, patience can feel like a burden. Patience can feel like a heavy load that we are carrying. In her song, Maria is talking about this person with 7 children. Patience is recognizing that working with 7 different little personalities is a big deal. Yeah. And maybe I don't want to be walking in that direction. Maybe that's a direction that is something that is not for me. Maybe the adventure that I dreamed about is not what's showing up, and so I don't want to face it. When we find ourselves with that inner no, patience is the kind of the trump card that we can pull out. And I don't mean it in the name of the president, but I mean it in the name of the card that we can pull out to say, this is going to override whatever else is on the table. Patience is like some other uncomfortable things. Patience is like faith. Faith is that capacity to see something that isn't present. Patience is that capacity to hold on to something even though it isn't right here in front of us. We all can relate with the 2-year-old because we like it. We like it in our hands, we like to hold it, we like to touch it, we like it right where we are, right?
Right.
And the notion of having to wait for it, I mean, it's still, look at commercials. For $5 extra, you can have it tomorrow. You know, UPS, you can track it. How close to me isn't? You can be seeing it. There's a Domino's commercial out that's now where you can track how your pizza is and how close it is. And oh my gosh, and if you're running to get it, you can get to the doorway just in time so that the pizza delivery and you are at the same place.
Yeah.
It's not patience, that's hyper-vigilance that borders on psychiatric disorder.
That's how they sell things.
The notion of patience, the notion of waiting, this is a perfect time to think about it. You plant a seed, but you plant it. You cover it up. And then you can look at it, you can get down and you can look, is it growing, is it growing? I mean, one of the things that's been described by Earnest Holmes and the teaching of the science of minds is that you hold an idea, you release it to the automatic action of the law, you plant that thing, and then you leave it there. And you leave it there with a certain amount of faith that something's going to happen. And the something that's going to happen isn't from something that we personally did. There is something in that seed that knows, hey, there's a new movie that's out, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, or Volume 2. I am Groot. There was this big character, Groot. And Groot was so large, Groot was able to protect the whole group by growing and surrounding them and sacrificing himself so that the whole rest of the crew was around. And there was just this little stick of Groot that the little raccoon took and he put in a pot of soil. And now there's this adorable, I am Groot. So instead of being this enormous Groot, he's this little Groot. I am Groot. The seed knows exactly what to do. But it doesn't need, the raccoon didn't have to tell it, you know, you put your roots down in the soil and sprouts and stuff comes up. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things about planning. We like to have every detail. But sometimes our visions and sometimes our hopes and sometimes our desires have a life of their own. When Maria was leaving the convent, going to serve a captain with 7 children did not seem like the ideal world. The patience, the faith, to plant it and let it be. I'm just inviting us to consider, how do we own that? As I give this talk is not necessarily about something that's simple or easy. Waiting and having faith is not easy. But to know that that's what's going on can make it a little easier. We plant our things and then they do sprout. Once again, when they sprout, we don't like say, oh look, here it is. I've now got my plant. Unless of course you're Groot and you are a little bit of a, you know, have the capacity to move and kind of have your being and do things. Patience is waiting for it to come into it at its own time. Sometimes we encounter a world where what is showing up certainly is not what we're waiting for.
Amen.
How many of us have found, though, that the very thing that we thought was the end of our world, was an opening, an opportunity that we didn't recognize at that time. Patience is the willingness to hold, maybe there is something here. It's the faith that maybe there is a prospect of something. What does this have to do with creative, confident creativity? It means that sometimes when we are stuck, it doesn't mean that we are done. It doesn't mean that we are doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that this obstacle, that this soil that has dumped on top of us is going to weigh us down forever. What it may mean is that this is a time when roots are going down. That this is a time when we are digging in and we are getting sourced in a way that we never thought was possible. Because sometimes as we just move along from place to place and from thing to thing, we don't have time to let ideas generate. Now the ideas generating is where the invitation about confident creativity, pensive. Pensive is being thoughtful. Once again, I say, how easy is it to just go off half-cocked sometimes? We can go off without thinking, we can go off without any kind of idea. One of the powerful things, in my opinion, about the science of mind teaching is it uses the word mind. And that there's a science to it, there's a logic to it, there's a process to it. I've heard people say, well, it doesn't really work. You know, I've tried to think about things, but then it doesn't work. Well, how much do we work it? In this teaching, there's a class that's called Foundations, there's a class that's called Beyond Limits. It's the first class. And a lot of times, people are able to create all kinds of new things in their lives. Out of the blue, for the first time in their life, they find a parking space wherever they go. Part of it is that they've set the intention, they've set the thought, I am going to find a parking space. How often when we set our intention, when we set our thought on something, do we find that it happens? One of the things I remember hearing about is, if there's something you want, look for it. So I'd really like this kind of car. One of the exercises, one of the activities is, where do you see it? Do you see it in your world? I'd really love, somebody wanted a Corvette. So start noticing, where are the Corvettes showing up? As you're looking for things, you start to notice things. Now we can say that perhaps there's something magical happening. We can also say that we are tuning our own attention. It's like you were talking about with Abraham. When you seek, with Abraham, when you seek, you have to allow it. But also in the shack, yes. It's that there has to be a readiness. There has to be a readiness. And the character is not all that ready. The character really gets pushed to the edge. In Abraham Hicks' thing, we have to be ready to seek. We have to allow it. Being thoughtful about it is one of the things that allows that. What is it that we really want? In my humble opinion, I suspect that what can happen that obscures us from getting what we want is that we get it all jumbled up. We want this, but 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 we want this. And we don't attend to any of it in a way that is consistent. Has anyone ever gotten a skill? Anyone here ever gotten a skill?
Yeah.
Have you found that the skill just happened like that? You could just step in and then suddenly you were this amazing whatever. It's very, even for the people that are naturally gifted, they continue to need to hone it. We talk about chess masters. Yeah, they were very, very good at chess, but they didn't just do that. They kept doing it, and they kept honing it, and they kept honing it, and they kept honing it. What if we were to rely on our thoughts the same way? Patiently, persistently honing, even though we're like, oh, I've got that. What if, even though I've got that, I still keep doing it? I'll use kind of a goofy illustration. When I first got my Fitbit, and I could do 10,000 steps in a day, I thought, wow, that's amazing. And it took me probably from the end of December until the end of March before I could get to 30,000 steps a day. And then it took me until July 4th, before I was at 69,727 steps in a day. And I thought, it's impossible. I was up on July 4th from 3:45 in the morning until 11:15 at night, and I was moving all day long, and it took that to get there. I don't think it's possible to go any further than that. But one of the things was to just keep moving. One of the things was to just keep going. If I had let that sense, if I had let that thought of impossibility stop me, then I couldn't have done it. Now at this point, I'm at, I think my top number is like 91. But 91 is different than 69,700 and something. And that is different from that 30,000. It just takes practice. It just keeps coming up with ways to think about it and approach it in new ways. So being thoughtful isn't necessarily about any particular kind of thing. Creativity manages and expresses in thousands and millions and a gazillion sorts of ways. The last piece for confident creativity is passion. Earlier I talked about that space between fear and excitement. In the science of mind, we often talk about a thought plus a feeling. If we're just so-so about something, yeah, it'd be kind of nice. How attractive is that? If you had approached that notion of touring, yeah, it's okay. I don't know that the interview would have gone all that well. I mean, Charlie, you have this this passion about the wings and what it'll be like to have the wings moving as you're on the Segway. It's this whole sense of excitement, this whole infection. I mean, that's the thing about emotion. Emotion is very contagious. So, creative, confident creativity is about finding that source of passion. Finding that feeling and fueling it. fueling it with the thoughts, fueling it with the patience to be able to say, yes, I have held on to this. I have held on to this for a long time. And I am really passionate about this. Yeah, it kind of mattered, so I cared about it for a while. We propose in this Science of Mind teaching that it is done unto us as we believe. And this isn't just a proposition that Earnest Holmes picked up out of the blue. It was one of the phrases that a kind of known healer said to people. It's because you believe. This guy traveled all over Jerusalem. One woman, she had been traveling from doctor to doctor to doctor, and she had all kinds of people judging her because she had this bleeding condition. Now, in her time, a bleeding condition was like the worst thing. Because she was a woman, first of all, and that was just terrible to begin with. And a woman who was bleeding was just the worst of all possible things. I mean, doctors didn't even want to see her. She was not a highly sought-after person, but she believed that if I just touch the hem of his robe, I will be okay. He doesn't even have to know. I don't have to even tell him because I don't want to freak him out. I don't want to make him upset because I made everybody else upset. All I have to do is touch the hem of his robe. And she's in a crowd. She's thinking, I'm pretty covered. You know, I'm able to move through here and no one's going to notice me. You know, it's not like I'm wearing a big thing saying, believing woman here, flashing light, you know, I have this blood condition, I'm contagious, be worried about me. Just grab the hem of his robe. And she was cured. Immediately cured. Now this person, Jesus, was like, whoa, wait, something just happened. In the story, it's not that, whoa, I just did something. It's that something happened. I felt something. He was moved by the faith that she had. And he asks the people around him, hey, what just happened? How would we know? There's this mob. You are surrounded by a mob, a throng of people that are touching you. How are we going to know which one it was? Earnest Holmes used that story to convey the idea, it's done unto us as we believe. She believed so firmly in his capacity to heal that she was healed. And this wasn't a one-time event. He had that Roman soldier who was worried about his slave. He came to him and said, I know you got it under control. You can fix this. And Jesus used this Roman. You know, this is like my saying, so let me go back a bunch. This is like my saying, Ronald Reagan completely healed something for me. So you gotta get it. Yeah.
During this also?
It wasn't that this was a heroic figure that they were writing about when they were telling this story. It was somebody that was in opposition. The Roman soldier. Boo, hiss. This is the time when in the movie, the people were like, boo, hiss. You know, if in the old-fashioned theater, you know, they'd hold up the signs, boo. You know, this part of the audience is supposed to hiss now. We're hearing about the Roman soldier. It's not a likable character. But still, this unlikable character is the one that in the story came and said, you can fix it. All you have to do is give your word. And it's enough. But the character, that person, Jesus didn't say, ha, see what I can do? That's not how the story is written. That Jesus didn't boast, that Jesus didn't brag. That Jesus referred back to him and it said, it's done as you believe. This belief that we have, this capacity for creativity, is founded on that patience. That our good is awaiting us. It's founded on our thoughtfulness. What is our good? Can we name it? Can we picture it? Do we give it time? Do we have the patience to shape it, to give the vision to it, to let it emerge? Or is it just a fleeting, like, there was something that was good? Give it that patient attention, that patient thoughtfulness. And then finally, that last piece. I mean, for the Roman soldier to come to what he would have considered, he was in this outpost, this hero for this group of lowly people. He went to a different kind of healer. He looked for a different kind of thing. He had to be passionate about it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. There were a lot of other things available to him. The woman who was healed, she was passionate because she was at the end of all hope. Sometimes what drives our passion can come from very, very different places. We might have every resource at our fingers, like that Roman, or no resources, like that woman. Whatever we have, though, we always have our passion. There's nothing that can hold us back from our inner world, our inner set of emotions. So within us, within those emotions, within our thoughts, within our patience, we have the capacity for unlimited, confident creativity. And so it is.
It is.